Tonight, we're opening a door most people are terrified to touch. Because the moment you say the words satanic cult, two worlds collide. One world of real people, real beliefs and modern movements, and another world of rumors, fear, and stories so dark they spread faster than facts. And here's the problem. When fear moves faster than truth, the world becomes a mess. Innocent people get blamed, real crimes get misunderstood, and the internet turns confusion into certainty. So in this video, we're going to separate myth from reality. We'll look at what Satanism actually means today, how it shows up in society, why people still whisper about cults, and how misinformation turns into a wildfire. Stay with me, because the twist isn't what you think. You've seen the comments before. Hollywood is satanic. Politics is satanic. Music is satanic. And the scariest part? People don't type it like a question. They type it like a verdict. But what if I told you the word satanic is being used to describe two totally different things? And mixing them together is exactly why the world feels confused. Let's start with the first reality. There are groups today that openly call themselves Satanists, but many of them don't even believe in a literal devil. For example, the Satanic Temple publicly says they do not worship Satan and do not believe in the existence of Satan or the supernatural. They describe Satan as a symbol, an icon of rebellion against arbitrary authority and a push toward rational inquiry. Not a horned monster in the shadows, but a symbol. And then there's the Church of Satan, founded in the 1960s by Anton LaVey, described by reputable references as not worshiping Satan as a literal being, but using Satan as a symbol of humanistic values like self-assertion and rebellion against unjust authority. So if that's one reality, why do people still imagine candlelit basements, missing people, and blood rituals? Because there's a second reality. Fear stories, rumors, and moral panics. And this is where the mess begins. In the 1980s and 1990s, a wave of accusations spread through parts of North America and beyond. Claims of satanic ritual abuse, secret networks, and extreme crimes. Researchers and official investigations spent years examining these allegations. One U.S. Justice Department-hosted report describes research that asked whether solid evidence existed for the more extreme claims often included in satanic abuse allegations. And academic work on the topic documents how these beliefs spread, why people believed them, and how many cases lacked corroborating evidence for the most dramatic claims. Because this next part is where most people's brains split in two. You can believe two things at once. 1. Real abuse can happen, and criminals can use any symbols they want. 2. Huge, sweeping claims about worldwide secret satanic networks have often collapsed under investigation. The internet has a favored villain, but social media doesn't like nuance. It likes one-liners. So the word satanic becomes a shortcut label people slap onto everything they fear. Here's the problem. In today's world, a label can travel faster than the truth. And satanic cult is one of the strongest labels people can throw at anything they fear. But the moment you slow down and ask, what do people actually mean by Satanism? The answer isn't one simple thing. Because right away, the story splits into two worlds. World 1, Satan as a symbol, rebellion, self-ownership, personal freedom, nonconformity, and sometimes activism. World 2, Satan as literal evil, secret rituals, blood, demons, and crimes hidden in plain sight. And the distance between those two worlds is where misinformation is born. Now, here's where most people get confused. Many modern Satanists don't even believe in a literal devil. them, Satan isn't a supernatural being, it's a metaphor. A character used to represent resistance against authority, the right to think freely, and the idea of putting responsibility back in their own hands. So when they say something like, "Hail yourself," it's not a spell, it's a statement. Take ownership of your life. But the public hears one word, Satan, and the imagination fills in the rest. And once imagination takes over, the fear story becomes unstoppable. We went from, "What do they believe?" to, "What if they're hiding among us?" in seconds. Because fear is addictive, and the algorithm rewards addiction. To understand why this keeps happening, we have to go backward, into history. For most of history, Satanism wasn't something people proudly called themselves. It was a label used by outsiders to condemn others. It worked like a weapon. If you could call your enemy Satanic, you didn't need to argue with them. You could erase them. That pattern shows up again and again. Societies get anxious, leaders search for scapegoats, and suddenly a hidden enemy is everywhere. That's how witch hunts happened, when fear spread through communities.
Fast that neighbors turned on neighbors. And here's the scary part. These moral panics didn't start with proof. They started with a story people wanted to believe. Now jump forward to the modern era, and the pattern repeats in a new costume. In the 1980s and 90s, there was a wave of fear in parts of society where people believed secret satanic networks were committing horrible crimes in plain sight. Accusations spread through communities. People were put on trial. Lives were ruined, often based on claims that couldn't be substantiated the way the rumors suggested. And even when accusations fell apart, the damage didn't disappear. Because fear leaves a stain. That's why, to this day, some people still hear the word Satanism and instantly assume danger, without asking what kind of Satanism is even being discussed. Now here's where the modern world gets more complex. In the modern period, especially as societies became more secular, Satan started showing up as something different. Not just as the enemy, but as a symbol that artists, rebels, and political radicals could use to challenge authority. In a world where religious rules controlled public life, Satan became a provocative counter-image, a way to say, "I refuse to obey. I refuse to be shamed. I refuse to surrender my mind." And then the idea evolved in different directions. Some forms of Satanism are atheistic, meaning the devil isn't a real being, but a symbol used to represent self-focus, personal responsibility, and freedom from guilt-based control. In that framework, rituals, when they exist, are often described as psychological theater, staged actions meant to focus emotion and intention, not to summon anything supernatural. Other forms are more spiritual or theistic, where Satan or Lucifer is treated as a real entity. But this category is far smaller and less common than most people assume. And even within it, many groups reinterpret Satan differently from the traditional pure evil image. And this is where misinformation cheats. Because people see one extreme story, one fringe group, one shocking event, one sensational headline, and they smear the entire label across everyone who uses the symbol. That's like judging every religion by its worst scandal and calling it the whole truth. Now here comes the mid-story twist. The modern use of satanic imagery isn't only about belief. Sometimes it's about strategy. Sometimes the name and symbols are chosen because they force society to reveal its hypocrisy. Here's how that works. When a government or institution openly favors one religion in public life, some groups use satanic imagery as a pressure test. Not because they want everyone to worship Satan, but because they want to prove a point. If you allow one religious symbol in public space, you must allow others too, or admit you're not neutral. So the name shocks people on purpose, and the reaction becomes part of the message. The scary label wasn't just a label, it became a tool that controls the whole conversation. And now we reach the word that keeps haunting everything: cult. The word cult is thrown around so casually today that it starts to mean anything I dislike. And when that happens, real danger gets hidden inside noise. Because a cult isn't defined by spooky symbols. A cult is defined by coercive control. So if you want to stay safe in the real world, don't ask first, is it satanic? Ask, do they isolate you from family and friends? Do they punish doubt? Do they demand secrecy and obedience? Do they use fear, shame, or threats to keep you in line? Do they turn your identity into a prison? Because control can wear any costume. A religious costume, a political costume, a spiritual costume, a motivational self-help costume, even a "we're saving the world" costume. And now we arrive at the final twist, the one that turns the camera back onto us. Maybe the biggest reason the world feels like a mess is not because evil is everywhere, but because misinformation is everywhere. Because once fear controls your mind, you don't need chains. You'll police yourself. You'll attack anyone who looks different. You'll share rumors as if they're evidence. You'll call it exposing the truth while spreading the mess. The monster wasn't only Satanism. It was fear turning into a business model. So yes, satanic ideas still exist today, but in modern forms. As symbolism, identity, and philosophy. As activism and protest. As art and aesthetics. And sometimes as fringe spiritual beliefs. The biggest misunderstanding happens when people treat one meaning as proof of the other. The world becomes a mess when we stop thinking and start labeling. When we trade curiosity for certainty. When we prefer a villain over a complicated truth.
Modern Satanism is real, but it's not one single thing. And it's often very different from the Hollywood version. The bigger danger is how fear gets weaponized, how accusations spread, and how misinformation can turn neighbors into enemies. If you want more investigations like this, like the video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Now tell me in the comments, do you think people fear Satanism itself? Or do they fear what they don't understand?